Truth Unveiled here, keeping you updated with the world around you. But yes, it's getting much worse than you think with these race wars and race riots. They're already beginning. And what are they planning for? Well, now they're planning for rioting and rallies for Donald Trump. And it's coming up sooner than you think. But basically, it's called Democracy Spring, and it's said to be the largest civil disobedience action of the century. And I'm going to leave some links below and some other news reports below as well. But it says that it could potentially threaten the drama in Washington. So here we are at Between the Lines, which is a weekly radio news magazine. And this is an interview with Kai Newkirk, who is a campaign director with the group Democracy Spring, which is the group that is responsible for this, conducted by Scott Harris. Now it says, mass civil disobedience planned for U.S. Capitol in April to protest big money in politics. It says, for the first time in recent U.S. history, candidates competing to win their party's nomination to run in the 2016 presidential election have been forced to address what many Americans believe to be their nation's broken political system and economy rigged in favor of the wealthiest individuals and powerful corporations. While Vermont's independent Senator Bernie Sanders has devoted his campaign to articulating these grievances more than any other candidate, others vying for the White House, including Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, have to a lesser degree also emphasized the failings of America's current political and economic status quo. Now, the reason this is so important and the reason I'm reporting this is why? Because what are they doing through this? What is Democracy Spring doing? This is another way for what? For your government to do what? To start these race wars, to instigate these race wars, to instigate all of this rioting going on, to instigate these protests, and to do what? To pay for them to be there, to basically pay for people to rally and to start violence, pay for people to trigger violence, and pay for people to start civil unrest, just like they did in Ferguson. Nothing new is under the sun. But guess what? You'll find out just soon enough who's really funding it and who's behind it. But it goes on to say, now with record-breaking, unregulated campaign spending by unaccountable donors through super PACs in the 2016 election campaign, plans are underway to organize a massive civil disobedience action at the U.S. Capitol this April, acknowledging the urgent need to address the failure of U.S. politics. Those participating in the peaceful protests will demand that Congress take immediate legislative action to end the corruption of big money in politics, protect the right to vote, and ensure free and fair elections that give every American an equal voice. When those of us who are awoke, we know that you never had an equal voice or an equal vote to begin with. Elections have been rigged to begin with. Never have they ever been fair, or say fair. They were never like that. Not only that, but for those of us who are really awoke, we know that Obama's going to stay in office anyway. So to me, it seems like a big shield to begin with. But it goes on to say, organizers of the action called Democracy Spring say more than 2,000 individuals from around the country, including Mark Ruffalo, Larry Lessig, and Zephyr Teachout, had pledged to risk arrest in the nonviolent sit-in at the U.S. Capitol. Between the lines, Scott Harris spoke with Kai Newkirk, campaign director with Democracy Springs, who talks about plans for what he says will be one of the largest civil disobedience actions in a generation and the goals of the protests in this important election year. Kai Newkirk is a campaign director with Democracy Spring, which is organizing a massive civil disobedience action at the U.S. Capitol this April. And then you can visit the website, which we will do in a second. But I also want to take you here to this website as well, and it's from Now the End Begins. It says, Soros group called Democracy Spring vows to cause a catastrophic civil disobedience to stop Trump. Do you see the first word here? Soros. Who is that talking about? George Soros, the same man who's funding these migrant crises and these refugees in Europe, the same man who's funding all these Black Lives Matter protests with all the rest of them. He's the same one who's funding all of this. It's no different. But it says the operation, calling itself Democracy Spring, is threatening drama in Washington with the largest civil disobedience action of the century. The radicals believe this will result in the arrest of thousands of their own activists. They intend to march across the East Coast in order to spark a fire that transform the political climate in America. This is not looking good, because what are they going to do? They're going to incite violence on purpose. And then what could the president do? He could say, oh my goodness, there's so much violence going on. We need to do something about this. We need to bring out the military. Another way for them to potentially drill another what? Military police state. No different, just like Ferguson. I'm telling you, they're trying any way they can to start these race wars and to start all the civil unrest. And it says, with little fanfare and almost no news media attention, no surprise, some of the same radical groups involved in shutting down Donald Trump's Chicago rally last week are plotting a mass civil disobedience movement to begin next month. And I actually reported on that. George Soros has just declared war on America. With the Soros millions behind them, a new brand far-left anarchist group named after the Arab Spring hoax of a few years back has vowed to set America on fire both figuratively and literally. These are the exact same people that did what caused mass disruptions at Donald Trump's rally in Chicago last week. They're vowing to not quit until thousands of them are in jail for crimes against the government. Though they don't mention Trump by name, they're obviously aiming to stop his run for the presidency, as they just attempted to do in Chicago. And I would not be surprised if they have another group ready to go for Hillary, and if they keep this up, because like I said, they're using Donald Trump to fund and start these planned, staged riots. That is what they're doing, and you're only going to see an uptick and an increase, especially now that these so-called candidates are going city by city, state by state. Oh, what better way to start unrest than start using them? Oh, what better way? The elite have it figured out, don't they? But it goes on to say the operation, calling itself Democracy Spring, is threatening drama in Washington with the largest civil disobedience action of the century. The radicals believe this will result in the arrest of thousands of their own activists. They intend to march across the East Coast in order to spark a fire that transforms the political climate in America. And of course, the chaos and the protests that canceled Donald Trump rally in Chicago, which was last week, and you can see a video there. But why is this so important is because they say, according to them, that it's going to be in April, and this is going to take place all throughout April. I honestly would not be surprised if this takes place all throughout the summer. They're going to keep it going and try to get everyone upset and riled up, and they're going to keep using the puppet named Donald Trump to do it in order to start and incite these race wars, race riots, and civil unrest. Because last I checked, that's what the military are preparing for. The military are even preparing for that. It's funded by the same people. It's funded by the elite. It's funded by Mr. Soros. It's funded by your government. And that is what they're trying to do. Problem, reaction, solution. Now, I'm here at the actual website, Democracy Spring, and like I said, we're just going to go over the actual campaign and the FAQ, and I'll leave the links below so you can see. But it says, the campaign, standing up by sitting in to save American democracy, more like to start and incite these race wars and civil unrest in order to get the public divided and conquered, courtesy the elite. But they won't tell you that, will they? But it says, from Selma to Seneca Falls, from Stonewall to Ferguson, the history of American progress is marked by the moments when we the people come together to stand up for what is right. Give me a break. I mean, do they really want us to believe that? Come on. But it says movement moments, from 5 million signer petitions to state house resolutions to ballot initiatives advancing fair elections. There is a growing movement in the U.S. demanding solutions to our deeply corrupt political system. Do not get it twisted. Do not be fooled. See, when you know the agenda ahead of time, then you know not to get involved, because what? The elite control everything. The elite rig everything. Not only that, but not only do they rig everything, but they know who's going to be president ahead of time. Presidents are selected, not elected, and they know for a fact that most likely Obama will stay in office. That's just a guaranteed and a given. These elections, or so-called, are just being used as distraction. But they know full well that all of this is incited, planned, funded, and staged by the government, by the elite, by the Illuminati for what? Control. That's why you don't have a voice to begin with. So whether you go marching on Wall Street and go marching on Washington, D.C., it won't matter. That's just the truth. I mean, I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but that's just how it is. But it goes on to say, but to shift the political climate much faster in favor of reform during an election year awash in a tsunami of big money, we need to create a watershed moment to show Washington that Americans are determined to claim the democracy we were promised. What democracy? America was never a democracy to begin with. It was founded on Freemasonry back in 1776. More than half of our presidents are and were Freemasons, which is the worship of Lucifer. You can even look up that up by Alice Bailey. I mean, you all need to wake up. What does that sound like? It sounds like problem, reaction, solution. They cause the problem and offer the solution. And the better question is, why didn't they do this back in 2012? Why are they waiting now to do it? Why right now? What's the agenda? But it says, with little more than our peaceful, dignified determination to stand up by sitting down, we have the power to create that watershed moment. See, they're feeding you that false hope. Together, we can defend the basic, beautiful concept that in our democracy, everybody deserves an equal voice, not just billionaires and big money interests. And like I said, I'm not against protesting and campaigning, but I think there's a way it should be done. And doing it this way, when I know for a fact what the agenda is, see, when you know the agenda, then you know, okay, what's really going on. But it says the campaign will kick off just as the advancing presidential primaries bring the national election to center stage on April 2nd, when a pioneering group of marchers from every state in the Union will gather with supporters at the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia on April 2nd. So they're going to start on April 2nd, and they say they will set out on a 10-day, 140-mile march from Philadelphia to the nation's capital, which is Washington, D.C. For now, anyway. But it goes on to say, on the road to Washington, Democracy Spring marchers will meet with fellow citizens, talk to the media, and create a firestorm of anticipation by laying out a simple choice to Congress. Either pass the bills to make the 2016 elections free and fair for all people as equal citizens, or be prepared to send us and thousands of patriotic Americans who join us from all across the country to jail simply for demanding an equal voice. How are they going to send them to jail? Through the military, through the police state, which is armed and ready to go. So it's time you start seeing this and you see the real agenda behind this. Because like I said, everything has an agenda. And the Soros and George Soros and the elite and the Illuminati are the ones planning all of this. Now, I'm here at the frequently asked questions, and the reason I'm here is to show you more information about this organization. But it says, when is Democracy Spring? It's from April 2nd to the 11th on March from Philadelphia to Washington. And then they have a second one from April 11th to 18th, which is a mass nonviolent sit-in and legal protest at the Capitol in DC. Now, if you look up different government documents, you even see that the government just so happens to be preparing and training their military for protesting. You can look it up in the internment resettlement documentations as well as many other government documents, and you'll see that the military are training for protests. Why would they need to be training for protests? And they even say in these documents that they have the so-called right to use weapons in these trainings or in protests. That means they can pepper spray you even if you're walking and marching. What is that? But it keeps going on to talk about who is organizing it, and it says it's being organized by a growing coalition of over 100 organizations, including a steering committee made up of 99 Rise, Avaz, Democracy Matters, Energy Action Coalition, the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, or RWDSU, and the U.S. Student Association, USS. And then you can look more for the bottom, but sounds like a bunch of government-funded organizations to me. And what are they trying to demand Congress? Of course, to ensure free and fair elections, because had they seen the executive orders, then they'd know that Congress has no power at all, nor does Congress have any right to do anything, at least according to them. They shredded the Constitution long, long ago. You don't have any rights. So I don't know exactly what's going to take place, but I just wanted to keep you updated with all this because there's a lot going on, and you always have to be awoke and aware. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son, Yahusha, that all may be well with you, because I'm telling you, they're preparing for all this civil unrest. It's only going to get worse from here. This is Truth Unveiled here. Shalom.